I was about 4 when this happened, so most of it comes from what my mom and grandpa told me. We had just moved into this little one-story house on a quiet street. Nothing special, just an older suburban place with narrow hallways, carpets that always looked kind of dirty no matter how much you cleaned them, and thin walls where every little creak felt louder than it should have been. The place always felt a little off. The backyard was fenced, but the gate never latched properly. There was a sliding glass door at the back that rattled if the wind blew hard, and a tiny laundry window Mom kept open for the cat. The house had this long hallway that connected all the bedrooms. If you stood in the living room, you could see straight down to the bathroom at the very end. That hallway always seemed darker than the rest of the house, even during the day. One afternoon, Mom and Grandpa took me grocery shopping. When we came home, everything looked normal. Grandpa unlocked the front door, we stepped inside, and then, slam. One of the bedroom doors down the hall shut hard, loud enough to make Mom jump. It was too forceful to be just a draft. Grandpa didn't even hesitate. He rushed down the hall and into the bathroom. The window was wide open, curtains blowing in the breeze. The room was empty. Whoever it was had slipped out just seconds before. Nothing in the house was touched, nothing taken, but it was clear someone had been inside. That night, Mom kept reassuring herself it was only bad timing, just a would-be thief who had panicked and fled. Even so, she lay awake for hours, staring down the hallway with every sound in the house amplified in her mind. It was around 3 in the morning. Mom woke up, but not from a sound. She just opened her eyes, and there he was. A man sitting on the edge of her bed. In his hand was one of her kitchen knives. She said she froze, solid. Couldn't scream, couldn't move. He was mumbling something, low and garbled, like he was talking to himself. She couldn't make out a single word. Then the neighbor's dog barked, just once, sharp and loud. The man stood up completely calm and walked out of her room. She heard the sliding glass door open, then close. For a moment, it was quiet. Then the glow of the streetlight through the curtains dimmed like someone was standing outside the window. Then it was gone. She managed to grab the phone and dial my grandfather. All she said was, "There's someone in the house." 5 minutes later, my grandpa and her 3 teenage brothers screeched into the driveway. No shoes, no shirts, just underwear. They split up and circled the house. Every door was unlocked. The back door stood wide open. Whoever it was had slipped away. The next morning, Mom noticed muddy footprints in the laundry room under the small window she always left cracked open for the cat. That was the entry point, but the more they looked, the stranger it got. The man hadn't come just to steal. He'd lingered. He fed the cat and poured milk into a bowl. He'd poured himself a whiskey from the decanter in the living room, added ice and Coke, and left the glass sitting there. In the fridge, some of the leftover roast was missing, but when they checked the eggs, someone had injected solder into them, like he'd deliberately ruined the food. In the laundry basket, Mom found her black negligee shredded into ribbons. On the kitchen counter, he'd cut up random catalogs with scissors, leaving the pieces scattered. The worst part? On the camera near my bed were 2 new photos, one of the stovetop and another of me, asleep. He'd been standing in my room, right next to me, close enough to take a picture. He left the camera on the nightstand, as if on purpose. There were fingerprints everywhere, on the fridge, on the glass, even on the sliding door. The police came, dusted, and collected, but nothing matched anyone in the system. No hits. The cops said he must have been someone who knew the family, someone who knew the house well enough to slip in and move around quietly. The theory that floated around years later was that it might have been an acquaintance of one of her brothers. Nothing was ever confirmed, just whispers. This person told that person, who passed it on to someone else. Eventually, the name of a guy did come up, and years later, he ended up in psychiatric care for something unrelated. But he was never charged. Mom never really got over it. She lived with that fear for years, that someone could be sitting on her bed, inches away, holding a knife. When she remarried, my stepdad had a monitored alarm system installed, and that helped. But the story never left her. It was a Friday night, a little after 1 a.m. My girlfriend and I had fallen into that lazy late-night mood where you're too tired to do anything but not quite ready to sleep. We were lying on the couch with blankets, scrolling through movies until we finally settled on The Village. The house was quiet, except for the low hum of the TV. The neighborhood was the same. No cars driving by, no sounds outside, just that silence you only notice when you realize how late it is. We lived in a small, single-story place. Not fancy, but it was comfortable. The back door led into the kitchen, and the kitchen had these old blinds that never really closed all the way. You could always catch little glimpses of the yard if you were at the right angle. I'd never really thought about that until that night. The movie had just gotten past one of its jump scares, so we were already a little jumpy. Out of nowhere, I caught this sharp flicker in my peripheral vision, like a flashlight beam cutting through the dark, turning on for just a second, and then gone. A split second later, I heard our back door shut. Not a slam, not the wind, just a clean, deliberate click. I looked over at my girlfriend. She was already staring at me, wide-eyed. She gave me the tiniest nod, like, yeah, I heard that too. I felt my stomach sink. I got up slowly, trying not to make any noise, and headed for the kitchen. The only light back there came from the glow of the TV behind me, spilling weakly into the room and warping shadows against the walls. Everything felt off, too quiet, too still. I crept past the fridge, trying to peek around it, and froze. In the corner behind our dining table, someone was standing. It was unmistakably a human shape, tall, thin, just standing there in the corner behind the dining table, completely still, not moving and not making a sound. My chest tightened. I couldn't move. I just stood there, locked in place, staring. My brain scrambled for some explanation. Maybe it was a coat rack, maybe a shadow, but it wasn't. I finally tore my eyes away, glancing back toward the living room to see if my girlfriend had followed me in. She hadn't. When I turned my head back toward the corner, I nearly choked. The figure had turned, and it was facing me now. I could see the outline clearly in the dim light, and worse, I could see two faint, dull eyes. They were staring straight at me. I didn't think. I screamed and bolted back into the lounge and yanked my girlfriend off the couch. I dragged her into the bedroom, slammed the door shut, locked it, and pulled us both down behind the bed. My heart was pounding so loud, I thought the thing could hear it. She kept whispering, "What's going on?" And I just kept hissing at her to be quiet. For 10 straight minutes, we sat there listening. Every sound in the house felt magnified. The creaks, the TV hum, even my own breathing. But there was nothing that sounded like footsteps, nothing that sounded like someone moving around. Finally, with shaking hands, I dialed 911. My voice cracked as I told them someone had broken into our house, that I'd seen him, that I didn't know if he was armed. They said officers were on the way. About 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the front door. My bedroom door was right across the hall from it, so I figured it had to be them. I grabbed my girlfriend's hand, counted to 3, and we sprinted out together straight through the front door. But there was nobody there. There were no flashing light. There weren't any cars. It was just the empty street. The neighborhood was dead quiet. We stood there shivering in the night air, calling out and waiting for someone to answer. There was no answer. I panicked and dragged us back inside, locking the door again. We stayed barricaded in the bedroom until nearly an hour later, until when the real cops finally showed up. They shouted from the door until we opened it. They searched the entire house, every room, every closet. They found nothing. There was no forced entry, no footprints, no sign anyone had been there at all. One of them suggested maybe we got spooked by the movie, maybe saw a shadow or something. But I know what I saw. There was someone standing in that corner, staring at me in the dark, and to this day, I still don't have an explanation for it. I was in 7th or 8th grade when this happened. My parents had this circle of friends who got together every week to eat and play cards. They rotated houses, and sometimes it went late into the night. I usually went with them, but that evening I stayed home. I was still recovering from the flu, too weak to really do much, so I camped out on the couch in the living room with a book. Before leaving, I asked my mom to close one set of curtains because the sun was glaring in my eyes. She pulled them shut and left the others open. I didn't think twice about it. Later, that turned out to matter more than anything. The house was quiet after they left. The late afternoon sun poured through the windows, filling the room with warmth. My cat, Whiskers, was stretched across the back of a chair, half asleep in a sunbeam. My old dog, Julie, was stretched out on the rug, soaking up another warm patch. Everything felt calm. I was sick, but it was peaceful, almost comforting. At some point, I must have drifted off. I woke up because Whiskers was hissing. Julie was standing stiff and growling. Not her usual growl either. This was a low rumble that kept going even while she breathed in. Her whole body was tense, her hackles raised. She was planted in front of me, facing the front door. That's when I saw the doorknob turning, slow and deliberate. The deadbolt above it was locked, thankfully. At first I was groggy and not processing what I was seeing, but then I heard footsteps crunching across the porch. Whoever it was moved to the side of the house. You could hear the grit or sand on their shoes as they walked. They stopped at the kitchen window. By then, it was dark outside. The lamp I'd been reading under was still on, and I realized the worst possible thing. I was sitting under the only light in the house with all the curtains wide open. I might as well have been sitting on a stage. Anyone outside had a clear view of me. I was in my nightgown, and my robe had come loose while I was lying down. Before the person reached the window, I slid off the couch and flattened myself against the side of it. Our coffee table was an old cedar chest, so I pulled my legs up tight so I couldn't be seen through the glass. Julie was barking now, launching herself at the window, teeth bared. Whiskers bolted and vanished under something. I realized I couldn't stay there. If he moved to the next window, I'd be in full view. I forced myself up even though I was dizzy from the flu and the sudden rush of fear. I moved along the wall toward the curtain my mom had closed earlier. At one point, I was right beneath a window as the man leaned in. I saw the shape of his shoulders, the height of him. Definitely a man, no question. I reached the phone and picked it up. The line was dead. He had cut the line. My stomach dropped. Almost immediately after, I heard the back door. The knob rattled, glass shaking in the frame. That door had a window in it, and I knew if he broke the glass, he could reach inside. For a second, I froze, completely panicked. Then I remembered my stepdad had a separate phone line in his office at the far end of the house. I got up and ran for it. Julie was right with me, barking like she was ready to tear someone apart. We made it to the office. I locked the door and grabbed the phone. It worked. I called my parents. My stepdad picked up, but I was so hysterical that I couldn't explain myself over the sound of Julie barking. Finally, I just screamed, "Someone is breaking in. Come now." I crawled under his desk and pulled the phone down with me. I curled up against the wall, trying to stay out of sight of the window. Julie followed and stood right over me. She went silent. Her hackles were raised, lips peeled back over her teeth, but no barking. She knew not to give away our position. It felt like forever, but it was only a few minutes before I heard a siren. The card group included a couple of deputies, and they came with my dad. Two went around the outside, while my dad and one deputy came in and found me under the desk. I was shaking so hard I couldn't even stand. The back door window had been broken out. There was blood on the glass where the guy had cut himself reaching in. He managed to get the knob unlocked, but couldn't get past the deadbolt. That deadbolt required a key from both sides. That was the only thing that stopped him. They caught him the next day. He had gone to a doctor for stitches and matched the description. I ended up sick again from the stress. I also remember being freezing in the office because that room didn't have heat. Sitting there shaking, cold from both fear and the air, waiting for someone to come. I did eventually stay home alone again. I refused to let him take that from me. But I never sat in front of an uncovered window after dark. And even now, I still check locks twice. I still draw curtains tight before the sun goes down. Because once you've felt what it's like to be hunted in your own home, you never really forget.